Greetings, Lorelords, and welcome back to Warhammer 40,000 History. In Part 6, we watched the Imperium endure millennia of unending war, but nothing could have prepared them for what was to come. Today, we plunge into the heart of the 41st millennium's darkest era, the time of ending. This is not just a time of war. It is the era of humanity's judgment, where every front collapses, every faith is tested, and the galaxy itself screams in agony. This is where 10,000 years of conflict reach their fever pitch, and the Imperium stands on the precipice of utter extinction. The galaxy unravels, circa 744.m, 41 to 750.m 41. The time of ending truly began around 744 M 41, a period of unprecedented peril. Within the Imperium, secession, rebellion, chaos, corruption, and heresy were no longer isolated incidents. They were the fabric of daily life. Mutants and witches rose in numbers not seen since the heresy itself, and desperate messages from across the galaxy echoed through the warp. Astropaths, working feverishly to receive these transmissions, could only confirm the worst. Planetary governors sent pleas for aid, Astra Militarum officers screamed for reinforcements, and fleet commanders issued dire warnings of a growing, unseen threat. As if sensing the Imperium's weakness, ancient and new alien empires closed in from every side. The Orks, the Eldari, the Tow, the Necrons, and perhaps worst of all, the ravenous Tyranids, all saw their opportunity. The forces of the Imperium fought with the valor of ancient heroes, but they could not be everywhere at once. The Space Marines and the Imperial Guard were stretched thinner than at any time since the Horus Heresy, and the news grew worse daily. Most ominous of all, prescient psychers foretold of great ripples in the warp, as if a colossal but unseen menace was stirring in the depths. The Damocles Gulf Crusade, circa 740.m 41. It was in this brewing maelstrom that the Imperium made its first official contact with a new and strangely progressive alien race, the Tau. For decades, members of the Tau water caste had established peaceful trade agreements with imperial frontier worlds, exchanging goods and technology. Alarmed by this threat of Xenos contamination and influence, the Administratum, in its ponderous, bureaucratic way, took nearly a century to prepare a response. The Damocles Gulf Crusade was the result, and in 740M 41 it smashed into Tau space. The Imperial fleet destroyed several outlying settlements, pushing deep into the Tau Empire. However, when they reached the Tau-sept world of Daleth Prime, the crusade ground to a bloody stalemate. The Tau, with their sophisticated technology and the aid of their Kroot and Vespid allies, thwarted every Imperial attempt to capture the world. After many months of brutal fighting, the Crusade's commanders agreed to peace talks with the water caste and withdrew. The withdrawal wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a pragmatic retreat forced by the approach of a far greater, all-consuming threat, Hive Fleet Behemoth. The First Tyrannic War circa 745.m 41. The time of ending truly earned its name in 744M 41, when a seer named Tagarath proclaimed the imminent arrival of humanity's end. Though swiftly executed by the Inquisition, his prophetic cry was echoed across the galaxy. The following year, in 745 M 41, the Tyranids and their Hive Fleet Behemoth made their dramatic entrance, first destroying the star systems of Tiran, from which the species gets its name, and Thandros. The Hive Fleet then descended upon the realm of Ultramar, laying waste to several worlds and badly damaging the Ultramarines' home chapter. The Battle of Macraga would go down in history as a heroic but desperate stand, where the immediate threat of Behemoth was ended only by the combined might of 2 entire Imperial Navy battle fleets. Yet, even in victory, Imperial commanders looked to their borders with growing unease, knowing that the fight had been almost a near-run thing. A cascade of crises, circa 748.M 41-801.M 41. The galaxy's fabric was tearing at the seams. In 748M 41, the Blood Star campaign unfolded as the Star Auries turned a blood red, heralding an increase in demonic activity that claimed untold lives, including 3 Adeptus Astartes chapter masters and a fleet admiral. In 750,041, the Great Exodus saw 6 Eldari craft worlds appear and vanish, leaving in their wake a ring of dead planets and suns, which became a salvager's paradise known as the Deadhenge. In 757M 41, the dreaded zombie plague, a plague sent by Nurgle, erupted on Hydra Menoris. A quarantine was imposed, trapping 23 billion people with a rising tide of contagious undead. In 766 M41, the Catachan and Riser systems were left vulnerable for decades after being attacked by Eldari corsairs under the command of Iriel, who destroyed the Imperium's early warning listening posts. Even the Astronomicon, the Emperor's divine light, flickered in 801 M41, throwing thousands of Imperial starships off course and dooming them to destruction in the warp. The Vraks and Crandor rebellions, circa 795.M 41-853.M 41. The threat from within grew more monstrous. In 795.M 41, the Crandor rebellion was harshly put down by the 23rd Cadian Regiment, but the chaos cults involved had not been seen for centuries, hinting at a deep-seated corruption that would resurface. And resurface it did. The infamous Siege of Fenris began in 813 M41, a 17-year-long campaign that started with the apostate Cardinal Zaphon leading the armory world of Vrax Prime into the service of chaos. The campaign rapidly escalated into a war of attrition, culminating in a full-scale demonic incursion that could only be stopped by the intervention of the Ordo Malleus and the Grey Knights. In the end, Vrax was a wasteland, its population entirely exterminated, a monument to the ultimate cost of heresy. The rebellion on Crandor III, thought suppressed, had been secretly nurtured by chaos cultists for over 50 years. In 853 M41, the uprising surged once more, led by mutants, psychers, and even Chaos Space Marines. 3 loyalist chapters, led by the stoic Imperial Fists, managed to rescue a few key officials before an exterminatus was mercifully delivered to the planet. The Badab War and the rise of the Red Corsairs, circa 901.M 41-937.M 41. In 901 M41, the Imperium was rocked by the terrible civil conflict known as the Badab War. Luft Huron, chapter master of the Astral Claws, refused to pay his chapter's tithe of gene seed and declared himself the tyrant of Badab. This intersystem war lasted 12 years, wreaking havoc on shipping lanes and dragging in more than a dozen Space Marine chapters. While loyalist forces eventually reclaimed Badab Primaris, Huron, and 200 of his Astartes escaped into the Maelstrom. There they embraced chaos, renamed themselves the Red Corsairs, and became the most dreaded pirates and raiders in the Imperium. Huron adopted the title of Blackheart, and by 937 M41, Imperial forces were stunned to see how vast his renegade empire had grown in only a few decades, wielding a military power unseen since the time of the Horus Heresy. The Ork tide and the Second Tyrannic War circa 941.M 41-993.M41. The Greenskin Menace was never a footnote. In 941M41, the largest and most powerful Orc warlord in millennia, Gazkul Mag Uruk Thraka, led a vast war against the strategic hive world of Armageddon. The Orks were only defeated by the stubbornness of the defenders, the combined might of 3 Space Marine chapters, and the legendary heroics of Commissar Yarrick. Gazkul escaped, vowing to return for a proper fight. Meanwhile, other Orc threats were met. In 989 M41, War. Snagrod nearly exterminated the Crimson Fists chapter on Rin's world when a missile accidentally destroyed their fortress monastery. The chapter began a long rebuilding process, but another existential threat loomed. In 993 M41, Hive Fleet Kraken arrived, marking the beginning of the Second Tyrannic War. The Hive Fleet ravaged the galaxy, completely wiping out the scythes of the Emperor and Lamentor's chapters and consuming hundreds of worlds before it was finally halted. The final countdown to 999.M41. The final years of the 41st millennium were a maelstrom of destruction, as if the galaxy was holding its breath before the end. In 992, M41, the Night of 1,000 Rebellions struck countless planets, with anarchy consuming even supposedly secure worlds, and severing contact with large swaths of the Segmentum Pacificus. In 993 M41, waves of astropathic pleas for help flooded the Imperium, so powerful that entire astropath choirs collapsed, their minds bursting. The psychic screams for help echoed across time and space, causing a breakdown in all Imperial communication. The final tragedies, Fenris, Cadia, and Baal. And then, in 999 M41, all hell broke loose. The Siege of Fenris, the Thousand Suns returned to real space to launch a vengeful assault on the Space Wolves' homeworld of Fenris. The attack was a plot by the Chaos god Tzeentch, designed to provide the final component for a ritual millennia in the making. Though the Space Wolves, Dark Angels, and Grey Knights managed to drive back the demonic incursion and banish Magnus the Red, the psychic anguish of 1 billion deaths ripped through the immaterium, allowing the Thousand Suns' homeworld to rematerialize near lost Prospero. The 13th Black Crusade. At the same time, Abaddon the Despoiler launched his 13th Black Crusade out of the Eye of Terror. He brought with him a force so vast, so terrifying, that it was the largest mobilization of Chaos forces since the Horus Heresy. His target, the Cadian Gate, the fortress world that guarded the path to Terror. The Imperium met the assault with a force of equal scale, and though they fought with unmatched valor, the battles were only a precursor to the true horror that would begin when Abaddon himself came to Cadia. Hive Fleet Leviathan. Meanwhile, the twin tendrils of Hive Fleet Leviathan struck the Imperium from below the galactic plane, cutting a swath of horrific destruction through 3 segmentums. Its ultimate objective was never in doubt: to consume the light of the Astronomicon and devour the very heart of the Imperium itself. The heroism of the Space Marines and the Inquisition only slowed its advance, and it was a matter of time before it reached Baal, the Blood Angel's homeworld, and then Terror itself. The galaxy was now a battleground with 3 apocalyptic fronts, all at the same time. This was not a war that could be won. It was a desperate struggle to survive. And it was here, on the precipice of galactic annihilation, that the 41st millennium would finally end. And so we close the book on the darkest period of the 41st millennium. The time of ending wasn't just a series of wars. It was a cosmic scream that echoed across the galaxy, a testament to a dying Imperium. But remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and the story of the Imperium is far from over. Next time, we'll dive into the final, cataclysmic moments of the 41st millennium, where heroes will fall, worlds will burn, and a new era will be forged in fire and blood. Thank you for watching, Lorelords. If you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more epic Warhammer 40,000 lore, and let me know in the comments below which of these apocalyptic events you think was the most horrifying.